Howdy folks, and welcome back. We've got an especially fun game for you today. Ghost of Tsushima was released in 2020, originally as a PlayStation exclusive, but as of this year has been ported over to PC. Honestly, what is there to say about this game that you don't already know? It's amazing, the characters are fantastic, the story is grand, and it's just an all-around fantastic game that deserves all of its praise. In case you are curious though, the events of the game are actually based in historical fact. The Mongols did in fact invade Japan, multiple times actually. In our case though, the game takes place regarding the first Mongol invasion, which began in 1274, and much like in the game, started at Komoda Beach. This is admittedly where the game splits a bit from historical fact, as there was no mention of a Sakai clan, and the defense was led by a Sho Sukuni, I don't think I pronounced that right, not a Shimura. Sukuni died, Shimura did not. But obviously this is a video game, not a historical adaptation. I do highly recommend looking into the historical Mongol invasion of Japan, as it is just incredibly interesting. But alright, enough of the history lesson. You're here for the beautiful Platinum Trophy. This Platinum journey will require us to beat the story, do all side quests, go on a massive collecting spree, and save the island of Tsushima from the Mongol invasion. With 52 trophies, including the Platinum up for grabs, let's throw that number up there on the board and begin. The game starts off with us being almost dead.
There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead.
But we are saved by an as of yet unknown individual, and we wake up in a cave with our wounds bandaged up. This is where we meet our first major character, Yuna, who is a thief by trade and necessity. She's the one who actually pulled Jin from the battlefield and healed him up. It wasn't for altruistic purposes, mind you, though she does want something from Jin. Specifically, his blade, in helping her get her brother Taka back. Jin, being the samurai that he is, states that he has to face the Khan and rescue Lord Shimura before he can go and help, for once Shimura is free, the island will have its leader again. For now, though, the two need to make their way through the ransacked village, and finally, after recovering your sword, you will also find a stable with samurai horses. This is where you make the most important decision of the game. You get to pick your horse. Though, keep in mind, whatever you pick is what you get, no take-backsies. I chose the black horse and named him Kage, or Shadow, because I am uninspired. Once you do this, you will also receive the first trophy, Gathering Storm, for recovering your katana and getting a horse. We are now officially on the board, and there's no turning back. Our next trophy comes relatively quickly as we make our way to save Lord Shimura, fail, and now we need to actually build some semblance of an army. As a samurai, Jin has always been taught that honor is the most important thing in his life. Always face your opponent head on and never resort to underhanded tactics. Well, for the first time, Jin doesn't do that, as Yuna argues that they're just too overwhelmed. So, for the first time, Jin takes his dagger and backstabs the Mongol. Now, yes, I know it's actually not called like a dagger, but I think it's called a tanto. So, before you get on me in the comments, after completion of the mission, you will get an interesting cutscene between Kotal Khan and Lord Shimura, with the trophy popping right after. Lost and Found is our first collectibles-based trophy, which simply requires us to find a Pillar of Honor and collect its sword kit. These will be very useful for a later collectibles trophy. Flash of Steel is one of the many combat-based trophies in which you're going to have to kill 20 enemies with a counterattack after a perfect parry. You'll know you get the perfect parry when you get that slow-mo effect. While on one of the mythic missions, I achieved Open for Business, which requires you to stagger 50 opponents. Staggering simply means filling the white bar above their head with the triangle button. You'll deal more stagger if you use the right stance, which we'll talk about at a later time. So, apologies folks, I'm not really sure why, but I don't seem to have footage from this actual mission. Either I forgot to record or something. Anyway, here's some combat B-roll footage in the meantime. So, our next trophy is Stoking the Fire. We learn that Yuna's brother, Taka, is being held in a large town called Azamo Bay. There are two reasons we need Taka. The first is that, Yuna asked us very politely, and she did save us from dying on a beach, so there's that. But the other reason is that Taka is a superb blacksmith. He is going to create us something so that we can scale the walls of Castle Kaneda and attempt, again, to save Lord Shimura. Once we save Taka and the cutscene plays, our trophy pops. So here's the thing. Armies require people, and since nearly the entire samurai retinue was killed on Komoda Beach, Jin needs to find an alternative that isn't peasants. This is when he turns towards the mercenary group known as the Straw Hat Ronin. They also happen to be being led by an acquaintance of Jin, Ryuzo. After several missions of trying to help the Straw Hat Ronin get food, they attempt to board a Mongol boat laden with supplies. They fail, as the Mongols burn their own boats, but a map of supply routes were found. The list is given to Ryuzo in exchange for his assistance during the Castle Kaneda assault. Upon completion, the trophy Company of Wolves pops. The next trophy is another fun combat one. Have a Nice Fall requires you to kill an enemy with fall damage by knocking them off a ledge. Easiest way to do this is by getting the Wind stance, the third of the 4 stances, and you need to get the first upgrade that gives you the stronger kick. Then, find an enemy and a nice hill and teach him to fly. Remember folks, it's not the fall that does it, it's the sudden stop. Witness Protection. Now, it's not only a government program to keep you safe, it's a trophy you get for actively keeping somebody not safe. And by not safe, I mean killing them. You must shoot a fleeing target who is terrified. You can cause terror in many different ways, and this is something you'll most likely get naturally while simply playing the game. We have our compatriots, and it's time to liberate Kaneda Castle. Although it does seem the Straw Hat Ronin won't be joining us. So, at this point in the game, Jin is already being called the Ghost, and Lord Shimura is vaguely aware that Jin may be practicing dishonorable combat tactics to win, but he believes in Jin to fight like a samurai. We will get into this more later on, but I love the duality of the storytelling between that which is traditional, in this case the way samurai fight, and the revolutionary to combat a new threat. In this case, it's using stealth and underhanded tactics. Anyway, as we make our way through the castle, who else do we come across but Ryuzo, waiting for Jin, stating that Koden Khan has placed a bounty on the Ghost, and anyone can claim it. So, Ryuzo does the only thing he thinks he can do and turns traitor in an attempt to kill Jin for the bounty so that the Khan will feed his men. We defeat Ryuzo, but he manages to escape and fight another day. We continue to make our way through the castle until we ultimately liberate Lord Shimura. In this case, we're actually going to be awarded with 2 trophies. The first is Family Reunion for actually saving Lord Shimura, and the second is Hero of the People for liberating 12 occupied areas in Izuhara. We're now in Act 2 of the game, and we're about to achieve our next trophy, Quick Study. One of the big gameplay mechanics are the stances. So there are 4 total stances: Stone, Water, Wind, and Moon. Each stance is good against a certain enemy type, and you can easily switch between them. For example, the Stone stance is good against swordsmen, Water is good against the shield people, Wind is good against spearmen, and Moon is good against the brutes. So you unlock these stances by observing and killing Mongol leaders. Once you kill or observe your last one, you'll unlock the Moon stance, and the trophy will pop. Remember those pillars of honor? Well, throughout the game, you will come across several more of these pillars, as well as other vanity items just strewn around the map. Once you obtain 30 items, you'll be awarded the trophy Slay, like Slay Queen, or I don't know, something like that. As you complete side quests for people, they will occasionally leave you gifts at specific locations. Once you've collected 10 gifts total, the trophy Gifted will pop. A way to slightly increase Jin's abilities are through charms. These are acquired by doing missions and side missions. You start with only 4 slots, but by finding fox dens and praying at statues of Inari, you'll open up more charm slots to a total of 6. Once you have the max amount of slots open, placing a charm in each pops the Charming Man trophy. There are 3 regions to the island, and each region opens up every time you start a new act. So each region also has 2 trophies tied to it regarding its liberation. The first one is when you liberate half the region, and the other is when you fully liberate it. It's important to note some occupied camps may only open up after certain story missions are completed, so just keep that in mind if you're missing a few. Well, I went back to the Izuhara region and liberated it, receiving a fight for the Isle for completing the liberation of Izuhara. There's a photo mode in the game, and the trophy, A Moment in Time, is awarded after you mess around with said photo mode. This is pretty easy, we'll just move on. We're now in a very interesting portion of the game here in Act 2, and we have 2 more trophies that'll be earned back-to-back relatively quickly, but I need to set the stage for you first. So, midway through Act 2, Jin goes back to his family's estate and acquires his father's, now his, clan armor. This armor will actually be useful for a later trophy, but we'll get to that. We also come across our old caretaker Yuriko, who will be helping us later. So, with that quick setup of where we are in the story, let's hit up these next 2 trophies. The first is Honor the Unseen. Throughout the map, you'll come across several locations that'll have this sort of wooden sign next to it. If you go up and swipe down on the touchpad of the controller, Jin will bow and some small event will usually occur. Do this 10 times at 10 different locations and the trophy will pop. Now, on to how Yuriko will help, and our next trophy, this one being story-based. So Jin finds out that Yuriko is capable of making poisons and decides this is going to be added to his arsenal. Poisons. First, he needs to find some reeds to make a blowgun. Once the reeds are acquired, he returns to Yuriko, who makes the first of 2 poisons. One that will instantly kill an individual stuck with it. Jin is now starting to fully embrace the ghost over the samurai, as he finds the Mongols don't fight on the same terms as the samurai. Thus, new ways of fighting must be found. At the end of the mission, we are also awarded Birthright for acquiring the Clan Sakai armor. Monochrome Masters is a cool trophy and really easy to get. There's a white dye merchant and a black dye merchant, both of which you have to find, and they won't actually show up on your map until you do. Then it's as simple as buying an item from both of them and the trophy will pop. Every trick in the book was a little confusing. To acquire the trophy, you have to get all the ghost weapons. Well, you get 5 of them relatively easily with each time you level up. What they don't tell you is that there's actually a 6th. It's the firecracker, and that needs to be unlocked underneath the chime. So once you get all 6, then the trophy pops. Because the Straw Hat Ronin turned trader, we still need some semblance of an army. To do this, we are going to rally the peasants of Yarikawa. There are 2 issues though. The first is that Yarikawa is currently under siege by the Mongols. And the second is Yarikawa absolutely hates Clan Shimura and Sakai because they were ruthlessly put down during a rebellion started by Yarikawa 20 years ago. So it's these 2 challenges that you gotta get over. Through hard work, dedication, and the absolute slaughter of Mongols at the gate, the Yarikawa peasants ally themselves with Jin when it comes to taking back Castle Shimura. Upon completion of the mission, the trophy Leader of the People is popped. After Yarikawa is allied with Jin, we get another ability, that of Ghost Stance. So to use it, you have to kill at least 7 enemies without being hit. You then can activate Ghost Stance, which insta-kills everything except boss fights and whoever you're fighting in a duel. The trophy, Haunting Precision, requires you to kill 20 enemies using said Ghost Stance. Remember how I said the Sakai armor would be useful? Well, here's the trophy where it's needed. All in the Wrist requires you to kill 5 enemies in a standoff. For your perks, you can get up to 3, but with a fully upgraded Sakai armor, you are able to get to 5. Then, it's as simple as finding a standoff with enough enemies and not choking. Good Riddance is our next liberation-based trophy, and it's awarded once you liberate 8 occupied areas in the Toyotama region. There are multiple characters that have their own story arc, and each story arc comes with its own trophy. Yuna's was the first arc I finished, though her arc in particular is just a lot of mini stories, unlike Ishikawa's and Lady Adachi's that follow one continuous story. Upon completion of the trophy, the Headstrong Thief is awarded. 1 down, many more to go. Perfect Storm is a bit of a grind as it requires you to upgrade your sword to the max level. The reason it's a grind is because you have to actually get all the materials yourself, and at least personally, for whatever reason, I was struggling to find iron for the last level. But upon completion, you have a solid sword and a shiny trophy. The next trophy is a story mission, but also sort of miscellaneous. Den of Thieves is unlocked once you find Amugi Coast. It's story-based though, because you have to go to Amugi Coast to find a smuggler who will get a message to the Shogun on the mainland. Know Your Enemy is another collection-based trophy. There's 50 Mongol artifacts throughout the map. To obtain the trophy, you only need to collect 20 though. If you're struggling to find artifacts, you can use the guiding winds in the map screen to help you out. Alright folks, so things are about to get really dark, really fast, so let's catch you up to speed. The next major story event happens when Ryuzo is located in a nearby fort. Jin plans to go in the dead of night, find him, and kill him. As he approaches the fort, Taka makes it known that he wants to help. Originally, Jin does try to get him to leave. Taka's a blacksmith, not a fighter after all, but he seems pretty adamant on staying and stated that he's willing to create a distraction to lure some of the Mongols away, allowing Jin less people to deal with. With said distraction, we are able to get into the fort and ultimately find Ryuzo. He then, shock and surprise, betrays us again and knocks Jin unconscious. When awoken, Jin is tied to a post with Taka tied in front of him. Khoten Khan then appears and attempts to get Jin to, join his side and get the people to surrender. He just flat out refuses. Khoten then unties Taka and hands him a sword and tells him if he kills Jin, he's free. Taka does not choose that path, and admittedly, while I'm not like a huge fan of censorship, the scene is pretty graphic, so I'm just not going to show it. Anyway, Taka turns down the Khan and is immediately killed with his head being ripped off his body. Jin is understandably and completely outraged, but able to break free and, cause a lot of havoc. Afterwards, Yuna shows up looking for Taka and sees his body. There's a lot more fighting with reinforcements, and the mission ends with us burying Taka and obtaining the trophy Dying Embers. Alright folks, so things are going to get a lot worse before they get any better, and it's now time to storm Castle Shimura. At the end, we will receive our next trophy, but again, there's a lot of important story and context here, so we need to get to that first. Prior to the assault on the Lord Shimura's castle, he let Jin know that he had formally requested the Shogun to allow him to adopt Jin as his son, thus making him Jin Shimura instead of Jin Sakai. And this would, of course, make him Lord Shimura's heir. This seems all well and dandy, but, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, and we'll get to that later. At this point as well, the Shogun's samurai have arrived, so now we have a true army filled with samurai and armed peasants who have had a couple of days of rigorous training. The assault on the castle begins, and it all seems to be going well until they hit a roadblock. Or, really, in this case, it's just a massive gate. Jin is told to scale the wall and see what lies on the other side. He does, but takes it a step further by using his poison to scare a couple of the Mongols, and then decapitates the Mongol leader, hoisting the head in the air to strike fear into the enemy. This is the first time Lord Shimura has actively seen Jin use his ghost persona, for lack of a better word. Lord Shimura is pissed and berates Jin right there on the battlefield, but they need to continue the assault on the keep. They break through, and there is one last bridge that must be crossed before the castle is taken. Lord Shimura's army starts to charge across, and that's when the Khan's army does the 1274 equivalent of, if I can't have it, neither can you, and blows up the bridge using explosives strapped to horses. Kind of the same as a fireboat, but it's a fire horse. So now there's a stalemate. Jin and Lord Shimura argue, and Jin says that there could be another way, alluding to poison. And Lord Shimura is going, nah, let's rebuild the bridge and we'll walk straight into it, as samurai. So Lord Shimura and Jin continue to disagree and argue before Shimura slaps Jin in the face, basically sealing what was about to happen next. Jin is now nearly, if not completely, committed to the ghost, and even if it gets him killed, he is going to make sure he saves as many Japanese lives as possible so a bridge explosion doesn't happen again, as he believes Shimura will lead them into a trap. Yuna also gives Jin armor that Taka made before he died, known as the Ghost Armor, and it's super freaking cool. I love it. So, Jin is able to slip into the Mongol-controlled camp, believing the Khan to be present. He intends to try to end this war for good tonight. So first things first, he takes the poison he's been using and poisons the drinks of the Mongols. It takes a little bit of time for them to all ingest it, but the death is rampant. Nearly the whole camp is dead or dying, so now it's just time to face the Khan. If he was still there. See, the Khan left Ryuzo in charge, sort of in place to deal with Jin, to sort of prove himself again. It's important to note that what you're currently seeing now is a duel, and a later achievement, well, trophy, requires that you have completed every duel in the game. Just as a heads up. When Ryuzo is defeated, Jin ultimately kills him, finally ending the traitor. As Jin walks out, Lord Shimura and his army come walking into the camp and see the destruction Jin has sown. Lord Shimura pleads with Jin to renounce the ghost and say it was all Yuna's fault, that she tricked him. Jin refuses, handing off his equipment to Yuna and telling her to run and find the Khan, and Jin is then taken as a prisoner, with the ghost trophy finally popping. It's now time to start Act 3, which starts with a breakout. One of our allies breaks us out of the prison cell Jin was being held in, and Jin sneaks his way through the compound, intent on meeting Yuna at a predetermined place so that he could get his items back. In the course of the escape, we mount our horse and get away, but not before Kage has been shot by multiple arrows in the back. As we continue to flee into the north, Kage succumbs to his wounds and dies. This was incredibly devastating. Kage had been with us the whole time, and they just killed him. There will be hell to pay. We are now in the frozen northern part of the island for Act 3, and are currently climbing a mountain for the last mythic tale. So, scattered throughout the map, you'll come across a musician who tells you about legendary heroes of Tsushima, and where, allegedly, you could find their weapon, armor, or technique. In my case, the last mission was the ability to set your sword on fire. Upon completion, we are awarded the Teller of Tales trophy. Our next liberation trophy comes pretty quickly with Mass Eviction for liberating 7 occupied areas in the Kamiagata region. Our next story mission, and it won't take me 10 minutes to go through, I promise. The plan is to finally attack the Khan, and we'll be taking refuge in Jogaku Temple for the meantime. Once we've reunited with all of our allies, we are awarded the Exiled Alliance trophy for doing that thing I just said a moment ago. See? Nice and short. It's time to earn our next complete liberation trophy with securing Sanctuary. This is for liberating all the occupied areas in Toyotama. Time to go back to some of the character arcs. This next trophy being for finishing Lady Masiko's arc. Now, her entire family and clan were murdered, well, assassinated. And there was a massive conspiracy around who supplied, supported, and ultimately who arranged it. As you go down the story, you come to find out that Lady Masiko's own sister was the one who organized the assassination attempts, and for the most part, successes, as she had been jealous of her sister for years. Seems the sister did not actually die in the attack like Lady Masako first thought, and faked her death. With the sister killed and that hollow feeling of revenge in Lady Masiko's heart, we are awarded the Vengeful Warrior trophy. Norio was a warrior monk that we met in Act 2, and his story arc finishes in Act 3, much like the rest. He was a monk taken captive by the Mongols and had his whole temple, including his brother, who was taken from him and killed. Or so we thought. As we go through Norio's arc, we save the temple and many monks, but also come to find that Norio's brother was not killed and instead had his arms and legs chopped off to send a message. Upon his death, Norio goes berserk and single-handedly burns down an entire Mongol fort, killing everyone inside. Now, Norio doesn't believe he can go back to the way he was due to the level of violence he committed, but he will continue to fight the Mongols as needed. The end of the arc awards us with the Warrior Monk trophy. As many games go, there is a leveling up system. This one is no different. You gain XP by completing missions and killing certain packs of roaming Mongols. The last level you'll achieve is of the title Ghost of Tsushima, which also nets you the trophy, the Ghost of Legend. Our last story arc is that of Sensei Ishikawa. For the whole game, we've been on the hunt for Tomoe, his prize student, who at one point up and attacked Ishikawa. Tomoe joins up with the Mongols and teaches them Ishikawa's way of the bow, with the Mongols using villagers as target practice. Now, according to Tomoe, though, this was because they were being tortured, and this put them out of their misery much quicker. Through the story, we find that Tomoe now wants to turn against the archers she created, as they are going to start burning villages. With the help of Jin and Ishikawa, they succeed in repelling the attack, but before anyone can get eyes on Tomoe, she's already gone. She's fled via boat to the mainland, and Ishikawa chooses not to pursue, stating, "It's over." Upon completion, we receive the Unbending Archer trophy, but this also turns out to be the last side mission tale, and are then subsequently awarded with the Helping Sword Hand trophy. Throughout the game, you'll find several different shrines dedicated to different kami. Honoring the shrines gives you a major charm that can radically change different aspects of your gameplay. Upon honoring every shrine in the game, the trophy Favor of the Kami is awarded. We have another collecting trophy, and this one is Avid Reader. This is obtained after reading 20 records, with there being 50 total. This was weirdly frustrating for me, and I had to use the Traveler's Attire and the Winds to help me find these scrolls. Alrighty folks, we are in the endgame now. It is officially time to kill the Khan. Prior to this point though, in the mission just before, Jin snuck into his uncle's room and left him a message stating what the plan was, and to ask if he'd be willing to assist in the fight. Of course, we wouldn't know the answer anytime soon until the fight started, but, little spoiler alert for you guys here, Lord Shimura does decide to join in the fight. So you should know this fight is broken into two steps. The first is a duel, and I won't lie, I was definitely on the struggle bus with this one, but ultimately did come out on top. The second part though, the Khan is treated more like a normal enemy, and you'll have to fight him while also dealing with a bunch of other Mongols. But, finally, you defeat the Khan, ending his life and reign of terror on the island. Congratulations, the day is saved. But is Jin out of the woods yet? Anyways, upon completion, you are then awarded the Sovereign End trophy. Okay, so the story isn't quite over yet, but before we go into it, I need to make something very clear. No amount of editing around or just trying to show you guys will do the end of this game justice. The story ending, the music, the visuals, just everything about it is so incredibly stunning, and the raw emotion you can feel is something you absolutely should experience for yourself. So I'm really sorry for not being able to capture the whole of it, but I will do the best I can. With that, we receive a letter from Lord Shimura asking Jin to meet him at the old dueling ground and to go for a ride with him. He and Jin travel by horse and talk about what's happened and how Clan Sakai has been dissolved by the Shogun, as well as the Shogun's concern for the rise of the Ghost, which, from a political standpoint, especially during this time period, does make sense. I mean, the Ghost does have a pretty large following, and will the people appreciate the new clans when they arrive? Who knows? The two end up at the Sakai family graveyard, and specifically in front of the grave of Jin's father. This is where Lord Shimura lets Jin know that the Shogun has declared the Ghost an outlaw and traitor, and that the Shogun has also demanded that Lord Shimura kill Jin in the name of honor and to show his loyalty to the Shogun.
I had to stop you from throwing away our people's lives.
You have no
honor. And you are a slave to it.
I absolutely love that line between the two of them. It really does show just the massive difference in the belief the two hold when it comes to honor and just how the war should have been fought.
I must continue the line of
At the end of the day, though, Lord Shimura is here to kill his nephew on the orders of the Shogun.
And my head
Lord Shimura hands Jin a piece of paper and tells him to write Clan Sakai's last words. In case you're curious, this is known as a death poem and was typically written by samurai on their deathbed before they committed seppuku or just before a battle. Admittedly, outside of that, I actually know very little about the practice and would love to hear and learn more about it. Once Jin completes his death poem, Jin and his uncle start combat.
It's time. Write the last words of Clan Sakai and Clan Shimura. I don't want to hurt you.
This was not an easy fight, and the music just absolutely slaps. Again, I actually had to cut down so much of this for the video, but this ending scene is truly one of the best I've seen in gaming in a long while, and I cannot recommend it enough for you to play it. If you have the PSN Now or PSN Play, it's currently available to you.
Killing me will only make them worse.
With that, though, we do, in the end, beat our uncle and are given the choice to spare or kill him. He requests to be killed, and while I first thought of sparing him, in the end, I did choose to kill Lord Shimura. With that, the story of Ghost of Tsushima is complete, and we unlock the Mono no Aware trophy for completing the game. But I also ended up getting There Can Be Only One for successfully completing every duel. I really just can't praise this game enough, and the ending is just... everything about it is so good. Anyway, sorry, we have a couple more trophies that we need to finish before we get this platinum, so let's buckle up and let's get this cleanup done. Our first cleanup trophy is Light the Way, which simply requires that we relight all 6 lighthouses on the island. We have another double trophy coming up, and it's for the liberation of Tsushima Island. The first is the new safe haven for liberating all the occupied territories in Kamiagata, and this is followed up immediately by Master Liberator for liberating the entire island. This is followed up shortly by the Cooper Clan Cosplayer Trophy, which is an homage to Sly Cooper, and to obtain this, you'll need to find an assortment of gears and dyes. I recommend a guide for this because the crooked comma headband can be a little difficult to find if you don't know what to look for. We now have our final collector's trophy called Body, Mind, and Spirit. This was the biggest grind of the game because you have to do every Hot Spring, Fox Den, Bamboo Strike, and Haiku spot. It's not hard, it's just tedious. Our last trophy before the platinum, saved for last, is the Dirge of the Fallen Storm, which requires you to play the Lament of the Storm song on your flute at a friend's grave. This is, of course, Taka's grave, though I also wish it required you to play it at your horse's grave. And with that, no introduction is needed as we are awarded Living Legend, the Platinum Trophy for Ghost of Tsushima. Folks, I've said it before and I'll continue to say it. There is a reason this game has so many accolades. It is such a fantastic game with a great story that'll stick with you for a while. This video was probably the most technically difficult one I have done because of how fantastic the game was, and I wanted to capture that while also not bloating the video longer than it needed to be. Please let me know your thoughts on that and how I did. As always, I have many other Platinum videos in the works, so stay tuned for that. And, of course, the best way to do that is the YouTuber's favorite call to action. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.